Okay, great. I just started recording. I'm sorry about that, everyone. I feel like we've had such trouble with video conferencing in the past, and Zoom was sort of the only thing that's worked. So it's a shame that we're having trouble with it today. Oh, here we Jill's trying to get in again. So it seems like most of the people here were at the trainings last year and haven't really started any big programs yet. Let me know in the chat if you have started anything and how that's been going. I know I reached out to everyone a couple of weeks ago, sort of with like a status report of where your library account is at and how many people have joined. We actually added new tools in the past few months to make that a bit easier to track. So I'll show you those as well. But let me start with kind of an overview just to jog everyone's memory. So if anyone here who doesn't have an account and is thinking about it for next year? So if everyone does have an account, you should have a special URL just for your library that people are able to use to sign up. I have a really good example of Daniel Pierce made this great poster, kind of advertising the coding platform, the fact that your patrons do have access to it for free. I really love this poster. But here, they're encouraging people to reach out, and then they send instructions with the link and how to make accounts. So I'm sure that I could send this to people for inspiration. I don't think Daniel Pierce Library would mind. But I really, really like this poster. And I think it's been working. I think they had about 24 students sign up in the past week. We've seen, just since school closed, a huge number of at-home signups and parent signups and individual student signups on our free side. And I think that those students don't always know that there's a free library option at their home library. So it's sort of up to the libraries to reach out to those patrons and to let them know that it's available. And it doesn't necessarily have to be through a coding program or through something that one of you is leading. I think there's a lot that students can do and learn just on their own. What was questions? Oh, cool. So 2 people don't have accounts. That's awesome. Here, wait, my dog is barking. Let me go. I'm so sorry, working from home. Let me go check on her really quick. This will only take a second. Thank you so much. I'm sorry about that. Cool. So for those of you who don't have accounts, let me start from the beginning. So Vidcode is an online coding platform and computer science curriculum that students can use on their own to learn how to code. We specifically teach JavaScript, and students are able to upload their own photos and videos and media and make projects that are really unique to them while they're learning. Here's some examples. And then we also, on the library side, have club kits. So librarians are able to run either virtual clubs or in-person clubs using the materials. And you don't necessarily, your librarians don't necessarily need to have any coding experience or background to run those clubs. We've sort of created everything, including videos like answer keys, to make that easier. And there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of activities. So if you're meeting like once a week or once a month, you're essentially never going to run out of material. Hi, welcome, Vicki. So things students make include like video filters. They make like flashcards. So you can see this is a more like introductory project. There's variables here, and students start to customize those elements to like customize things like the font of their text, to move graphics around. That builds to things like animations. Oh, looks like someone's not muted. There we go. And that builds to things like games and simulations and visualizations. Oh, computer lost immediately. Yeah, really beautiful projects like this. So that's just an overview. The language we teach is JavaScript right now, but we're adding Python this summer, something that's been like long awaited internally and something that I'm really excited for. You guys can ask questions throughout as well. I always kind of prefer like questions sort of throughout instead of like all at once at the end. So let's see. So for everyone who's new, just to show you the student side of things. So this is where students spend most of their time. This is the actual like course pathway. So students start with like the absolute basics and build, like you saw in the gallery, to sort of making their own software. Open the first one. So this is the code editor. This is where students spend most of their time while they're learning, or if they're in a club and working on something. Each one has instructions on the left here. The code editor up here, their actual canvas where the projects that they're making appear. And then they have these tabs, so they can upload their own backgrounds, they can record things from their webcam. That's actually a new feature from last year. They can find their own graphics, and they can upload and use their own music as well. As people make projects, they start really, really simply by just dragging videos in or graphics in. They also have access to blocks here that they can drag in and see the change right away. So everything that they do in their code editor has this cool one-to-one effect. So Kimberly asked, as far as a remote club, or as far as running a club, will having no experience be noticeable to the kids? Yeah, that's a good question. So maybe, but I think that that's fine. A lot of librarians that we know run the club, and they kind of do it as facilitators. And so they'll like introduce a topic using the club kit or the lesson plan. And students will kind of go through the tutorial on their own. And when they do have like debugging questions, at least when it's in person, they can ask each other. And they like learn from each other, especially as some kids go through the material more quickly than others. Let's see what else. Yeah, and then in a remote setting, when students have bugs, because we've been running a remote club just to try it out and learn, and just to offer students something when school is closed. And when students have debugging problems, we'll often post the code into Zoom, and then the students will like help debug it, and it's been very cool and like this like surprising learning experience. Yeah, so if students do have accounts, then they do have access to the course pathway all the time. So it is possible that something you do in club will overlap. One way to think about that is that with the virtual club that we've been doing, sometimes students just do the same project over and over. And it's sort of interesting. The output gets very different. They take what they learned in other tutorials and bring it back to the first one. One example is, let's see. So this is one, we had like an introductory club Tuesday where we went through the very first project. And one of the more advanced students came and sat in. And they made this using like a repeat loop and randomness and things that they learned in other projects. And they just brought it in themselves. I didn't prompt them to do this at all, which was very cool. But then the other option is that if they are really motivated and go through it on their own, they can still sit through your introduction, because the tutorials do go over the same thing kind of over and over and over again. Like we'll introduce arrays, which is an ordered list. And then we introduce loops, which is how that object was moving. But as we get into loops, we cover arrays again. Like we cover variables, which are like containers in code in the first unit. And then we cover them again in unit 2 and again in unit 3 because they're so important. And they keep coming up as we introduce new things. So if you did introduce variables in club and a student was working on like a level 3 project, it would still be relevant to what they're learning. And they could always, like the rest of the students, could you make a meme if it's new to them? And that student that's really far ahead could just do their unit 4 project. Those are really good questions. Thank you. So this first tutorial is really just here for students to kind of get comfortable with the Vidcode interface, to get comfortable like writing code that can break. A lot of times this is students' first exposure to like JavaScript, to essentially like text-based programming instead of block-based programming. If they want to get rid of an effect, they can just delete it. And they can actually go in and type these numbers, change them around. Let's see, I'll lighten this up. Okay, I can't see it now. Here, I'm gonna bring in the dinosaur. I always choose the dinosaur. I feel like everyone does. I don't know why I chose the why I chose the butterfly. There we go. I'll make it a pixelated dinosaur. Okay, great. So once anyone is done with their project, if they started working on it and want to come back to it later, they can save it. But let's say I'm done with this, club is over. I can submit it. And when we've been doing a virtual club, we've had students actually share their project at the end. I don't let them share their screen because that would be insane. But I do have them post the links and open them up and like talk about them. Oh, and just to show you really quick. So this builds to me actually writing my own code. So by the 4th activity, I'm setting variables in my code and actually customizing them. So I can add things like text. And I start to learn how to like change the color of that. And we have tutorials that go through all of this. But that's an example of the kind of code that students will be writing themselves by activity 4. It takes them off drag and drop really quickly. I'll just pixel dino. And Kimberly, to your question, so on a free account, which is not what they would have through the library, they only have access to a handful of activities. So to get access to the full pathway, they would have to sign up through your library, even whether or not they're in club. So when students publish a project, it goes to this page. From here, they can edit it. If they send it to you or another student, they can actually remix it and make their own version of the project. And then there's the option to share it or embed it in another website, like you would a YouTube video. So they can share it that way. Oh, and the other thing we're adding a feature where they're able to download it as either a GIF or a video, and that's coming this summer. Does anyone have any questions? I'm gonna log into the demo account really quick and show you the like admin panel side of things. So this is the admin panel. This is what you're going to have access to be able to see who's signing up, what they're making, how far they're getting in the course. They're all going to be in this like roster here. You can see when they joined and when they last logged in. So you can see who's active. You're able to see their progress through the course. As they go through units, they earn these certificates, which can be a really nice way to celebrate their progress. And you're also able to see their projects, like what they're actually making. And if you want, you can organize these by like when they were submitted. So it's a really easy way if you're trying to track usage. You can see everything that was made in the last month, the month before, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the like resources I was talking about that are going to help you run a club. There's things like the background of each tutorial. So how you would introduce different topics, how to talk about them, what gets covered. There's sharing prompts. So prompts for students to talk about what they made. And then reflection as well, if you want them to talk in small groups or just sit down and sort of like write about what they've been learning. I find the sharing and reflection prompts a bit hard in a remote setting. What I've been doing, I've been having students share those links, like the one that you saw when I published my project. And then I'll actually just open them up and talk about them. So like I am kind of being the sharing and reflection prompts. Like I'll open it up and be like, oh, this is wonderful, and then talk about their code. So then they hear like me use the vocabulary. And it's been going really well. But obviously it would be better if there was a place for them to like share and talk about their work themselves. You also have access to this chat bubble here. So you're able to talk to our team all the time. If you have a question, if students have a question. If your patrons do sign up, they will not have access to this chat bubble. So they actually, because we just don't give it to students, student accounts. But they would be able to go through you and ask different questions. And then if you're not sure of the answer, you can always send it to us and we get back pretty quickly. The other thing that's in this, I just want to point out, is the sample solutions. So if you're curious what people make at each stage, this is a really good place to look at that. So one thing that Daniel Pierce Library is doing, they're actually sending their patrons to our coding club. So let me show you that. So like I said, we've been meeting every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, just to walk students through different tutorials. But like I said, those students don't have pro accounts. So it can, I think it's been a really good match, having Daniel Pierce, having those students have access to the full course, and then also having them have access to our once a week club, where they like watch one of us go through a tutorial and talk about different concepts. And then I think they're thinking about having a local club as well, where students can come and actually share their projects and like talk about what they've learned. So I am excited to hear how that goes. Let's see what else. Yeah, I mean, I would just stress again that I think it's really important for students to have access to this kind of thing, especially this summer, especially with school closed. And I wish I could reach out to every student that signed up in the area and be like, check your local library. But I just don't know where they're all from. So I can't do that. But I do encourage you to share this with your patrons, for those of you who are still signed on, because I think there's a really, really big need right now, as far as like learning from home. Let's see, things that are coming this summer. Like I said, we're finally adding Python, which I am super, super, super excited about. People have been asking for that for a long time, so we're going to have 2 languages that students can learn. The interface is going to be really similar to the current one. They're just going to be making Python projects instead, and I'm not exactly sure what the library is going to look like yet. So the project that they make might end up looking a little bit different. We're also adding hardware projects. So when things do reopen again, if your library has access to like Makey, or any Arduinos, there's going to be tutorials that pair with those. So students will be able to learn a bit more about the hardware that you have in your library while they're going through Vidcode projects. And then the other thing that we're building is like shareable portfolios. So right now, as a library, you have access to a showcase essentially, where you can post the work that your patrons are making. It's anonymized, so you don't have to worry about anyone under 13 having their like username or anything visible. But we're making a version of this for like individual users as well. So me or one of your patrons would be able to actually create their own portfolio of work. And we've seen students use that to apply to like high school in New York. We've seen them use it to apply to jobs. So I'm excited to have that sort of built into the site. Yeah, does anyone have any other questions? I'm trying to think of what else to show you. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's it. I think that there is also like a nice in between like a formal club and students being completely on their own. I think there's like a nice space to make kind of like a library check-in or a forum where people can post their work. I'm still not, I haven't successfully figured out what that looks like. We have a forum that librarians and teachers use, but we haven't, and you're all welcome to join it. It's just community.vidcode.com. And it's where you can go in and learn from other librarians and just talk to other people who are also running coding clubs. And we haven't successfully made something like this for students yet, but I think there's a big opportunity for libraries to give people a place to asynchronously like share their work and ask questions, and kind of feel like they're more in a community and that they're learning with the community, versus like somewhere between like learning in a silo and like a formal club. Yes, so Kimberly, that is all from your dashboard. So you're gonna have one like group that holds all of your patrons in it. When they sign up, they're gonna appear here. And you're gonna see like when they joined, when they last visited, and everything that they've made and when they published it. Yeah, exactly. And we do that for libraries too. We'll put reports together. So if that's easier for you, we can make that for you as well. It's sort of just library to library, like what people want. Some people don't want that email every month. They'd rather just log in. But yeah, we do that for a bunch of libraries. Yeah, of course. Well, cool. Thank you all so much for coming. Yeah, I think after everyone signs up, since it seems like we have a few new people who are considering it, I'd love to do like a bigger training where we dive into specifically clubs or whatever you're all sort of thinking about. And then, yeah. Oh, one question that people are having about clubs is how you deal with the fact that some students are like going to move faster than others, or like some students have been to 5 clubs and some have only been to 1. We've seen that sort of work in 2 ways. The first is that it's more informal and students kind of work on what they want and move at their own pace, and the librarian is sort of there just as a reference. And the other way we've solved it is to actually have 2 clubs. So Tuesdays is for beginners, and we go over the same like 4 tutorials in a loop forever. And then Thursday we have a more advanced club where we actually move through the curriculum and get more advanced. Cool. Well, thank you all so much for coming. If anyone has any questions, my email is leandra@vidcode.com. And if you think of anything after this, feel free to email me. And I guess that's it. So have a great rest of your week, everyone. Joanna, I'll upload this unlisted on YouTube and get you the link to send to everyone who wasn't able to get in.
All right, thank you. And
right.
just a reminder that Leandra is going to do another demo on Friday. So if you would like to do this again, if you need, more details, or if you think of a question you want to join in on that, you absolutely can. You can register for that on the RCLS calendar.
All right, thank you all so much.